It has Newton to do with me. Holly and Rosemary were secondary school physics teachers with a difference. Holly liked finding the centre of gravity of all her furniture in her apartment, while Rosemary enjoyed applying Newton's laws of motion by pushing everything and everybody around. Ladies' heads were turned when a new teacher joined the school. Thomas was tall, handsome, and oozed charm, and his family owned 400 acres near Didcot. When he wasn't at school or giving private lessons, he devoted much of his spare time to his hobby, stock car racing. Holly and Rosemary competed fiercely for his attention. Thomas, tell me more about how polynomial theory can be applied to furniture. I mean, if the shape can be changed, what will the corresponding change in its centre of gravity? Will it be thicker? Inquired Holly, preening herself like a love-struck teenager. Oh, come on, Rosemary, give Tommy's brilliant mind a rest. Holly's face darkened at his rival's snub. Rosemary turned a face to him and looked into his eyes and said, "We don't want to let our handsome Einstein tire himself out for Friday, do we?" Sensitive to the rivalry between the two physics teachers, Tom suggested they do some experiments with his collection of cars at Didcot the following weekend. "Welcome to my jalopy collection," said Thomas, sweeping his hand across the sundry collection of Peugeots, Fiats, and Opels that were rusting away on that crisp March morning. On the dusty path outside his property, they arranged 10 vehicles bumper to bumper. The handbrake in each was off. "Watch this," said Rosemary as she climbed into the last car and fastened her seatbelt. After a few attempts, the engine sputtered into life, and pools of unhealthy fumes engulfed Tama and Hala, who felt his fingers interlaced with those of her left hand. Rusher reversed the car about 50 yards from the queue, crashed the gears into first, revved up and sped forward, working her way into fourth, and she struck the car at 80 kilometers an hour. It sounds more impressive than 50 miles an hour, doesn't it? But anyway, the ninth car jerked away from the end of the line. "Impressive, eh?" said Tom. "Wouldn't you like to do that in a traffic jam downtown?" "Now you two," said Rosemary. The cars were put back as they were, and Tommy and Holly reversed 2 cars at about 100 meters away from the remaining 8. Still sounds better in meters than yards, doesn't it? Both sped towards the line of cars. With split-second timing, their vehicles struck the Fiat at the end. A Peugeot and an Opel Vectra separated themselves from the far end of the queue. "Just like Newton said," commented Rosemary. "Enough fun for the moment," said Tom, motioning them to his villa for lunch. His hand was on Holly's shoulder. Rosemary seethed with anger. After lunch, Rosemary suggested they try the morning's experiment again. Hala climbed into a battered Mercedes. She dutifully fastened her seatbelt, then vroom! She smashed into the line of cars at 150 kilometers an hour. Her seatbelt snapped. She went through the windscreen and fell in a broken heap in the dust. During their investigations, police found that the handbrakes of the stationary vehicles were on and that the seatbelt had been partially severed. A seatbelt dealer is helping police with their inquiries.